Why do people very often not ask why? For example, why do people not need eyeglasses to see clearly in their dreams? Why do people blow out candles on a birthday cake and thus exhale misty germs for others to ingest? Why is it that some people get irritated, if not angry with you, when you don't say, "God bless you," after they sneeze? Why is it that some people's urge to urinate intensifies as they get closer to a restroom or toilet? Why is it that in professional sports, coaches refer to their adult players as kids and not men? Why do we have to die after learning how to live? Why is sugar sweet and salt not when both look the same? Why is it that new buildings nowadays often fail to have windows that can be opened? Why is it the Lone Ranger is not really alone, but travels with an Indian scout? Why is it that some people eat to die rather than eat to live? Why is it we refer to God as male by using the pronouns he, his, and him? Does God have gender as we? Why is it that a commercial airliner's flight recorder is called a black box when it isn't black but rather red or orange? Why is it sadly nowadays that some people who decide to kill themselves choose to take others with them? Why is it that some politicians tell willful listeners that I misspoke when they really mean, or should say, sorry, but I lied to you? Why do so many professional basketball players nowadays often come to their game in outfits that look like Halloween costumes? Why do we tend to say, turn on the TV, instead of start the TV or push on the TV? Because now there is a button to push and not a knob to turn on a remote or turn on the actual TV. Why is the Big Bang called the beginning of our universe when things had to exist before this event? Why is it that a DNA test is not required for two persons who are engaged to get married in order to avoid possible marriage to a close relative? Why do certain animals know when and where to migrate? Animals such as birds, butterflies, wildebeest, whales, sharks, and salmon. Why is it that men have nipples on their chest, but they cannot and do not nurse babies? Why do so many people carry their smartphone in their butt pocket? Why do some people try to eat all they can eat in restaurants that advertise all you can eat? Why do some people, too many, refer to the human race as mankind instead of humankind so as to include women? Why is it that young people often try to look or act older than they are, and old people often try to look or act younger than they are? Why is it people often say, I blew my car horn instead of I sounded my car horn, because we don't blow a car horn? Why do people speak of tape recording instead of voice recording? Because tape recording is obsolete. Why is it that some media news reporters or personalities call a male child a young man and a female child a young lady? They are children or boys and girls and not adults. Why are many men nowadays wearing suit coats or sport coats as a fashion trend that seems to be too small? Why are people wearing clothing in public that appears to be pajamas or lingerie? Nowadays, why is TV programming often interrupted by frequent and long commercial segments, when in early TV programming of the 1950s, a single commercial segment was only 15 to 30 seconds? Why do some people check the time on their watch or smartphone again just seconds after checking it? Did they not remember what they saw the first time? Why are some companies making and some consumers buying deodorant body spray to deodorize their entire body, including private parts? Why do people say things like millions and millions or thousands and thousands? Doesn't it suffice just to say millions or thousands? Why do some people chew gum and swallow their saliva? Why is it that some folks smoke when drinking beer or coffee? Why, in many Western cultures, are women more likely than men to shave hair from their armpits? Why do professional football players and baseball players spit on the outdoor ground, But basketball players do not spit on the indoor wood basketball floor. Why? Why do we often fail to ask why or why not? Thank you, Frederick Douglass Harper. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share.